God said, pack your bags, it's time. Not tomorrow. Not when you feel ready. Not when every question is answered. Now, hear that again. Because this is not a poetic phrase meant to inspire emotion. This is a divine summons meant to shake your spirit awake. God is speaking to people who have stayed too long in places they outgrew, who have tolerated what they were meant to conquer, who have prayed for change while refusing to move. God said, pack your bags. It's time. And when God speaks like this, it is never casual, never symbolic, never optional. There comes a moment in every life when God interrupts routine. The familiar becomes uncomfortable. What once felt safe now feels heavy. You wake up with a restlessness you cannot explain. You try to settle your heart, but peace will not stay. That is not confusion. That is not anxiety. That is God stirring you because the season has shifted. God never calls you forward until what is behind you can no longer sustain what is within you. When God says it is time, it means the grace that kept you where you were has lifted, and the grace that will meet you ahead is waiting for your obedience. Many people misunderstand divine timing. They think God moves according to comfort, but God moves according to purpose. Comfort is often the enemy of destiny. If God waited until you felt fully prepared, you would never move. If God waited until the road was clear, faith would not be required. When God says, pack your bags, He is saying, release what you cannot take with you. There are habits you must leave behind. There are mindsets that cannot cross into the next season. There are relationships that were assigned to your past, not your future. God is not being cruel when He asks you to let go. He is being precise. Some of you have been asking God for expansion, but you are still living in a space built for survival. You prayed for increase, but you keep thinking small. You ask God to elevate you, but you refuse to leave the low place because it feels familiar. God is saying, I cannot pour new wine into old containers. I cannot dress you for a new assignment while you insist on wearing yesterday's garments. Pack your bags. It's time means God has already gone ahead of you. The provision is there. The door is there. The opportunity is there. What is missing is your movement. Faith is not proven by what you believe in silence. Faith is proven by what you are willing to step into when there is no visible evidence. When God tells you to move, He does not show you the entire map. He gives you a direction and watches whether you trust His voice more than your fear. Fear will always ask for guarantees. Faith responds to instruction. Fear says, what if it doesn't work? Faith says, if God said it, I will go. When God says, pack your bags, He is not asking for your opinion. He is inviting your obedience. There are people listening who know exactly what God has been saying to them. You have felt it in your spirit, heard it in the quiet moments, sensed it in the disruption of your peace. You tried to ignore it by staying busy. You tried to silence it by being practical, but God's voice does not fade just because you refuse to answer. It grows louder not to torment you, but to rescue you from stagnation. God loves you too much to let you settle where you no longer belong. Every great shift begins with a divine disturbance. God disturbs your comfort to develop your capacity. He disturbs your routine to reveal your calling. He disturbs your attachments to prepare you for alignment. You think the shaking means something is wrong, but often it means something is finally right. God is rearranging your life to match the future He already designed. Pack your bags. It's time means the old structure can no longer contain the weight of the blessing coming. Do not romanticize your past. What God did before was real, but it was not final. Gratitude for yesterday must not become resistance to tomorrow. There are seasons that were necessary but are now expired. Staying in an expired season does not honor God. It limits you. God is a God of movement. Creation itself moves by His command. When He speaks, things shift. When He calls, stillness becomes disobedience. Some of you are afraid because you associate movement with loss. But what you call loss, God calls pruning. God never removes anything without intention. He removes to make room. He subtracts to multiply. He closes one door because it no longer leads where He is taking you. You cannot carry everything into the next season. Some things are too heavy. Some things are too contaminated by fear, doubt, and limitation. God is not asking you to pack your wounds. He is asking you to pack your faith. When God says pack your bags, He is saying prepare your mind. Preparation is faith in action. Preparation says, I believe God enough to get ready. You do not pack for a trip you do not believe you are taking. You do not prepare for a future you do not expect. Some people say they trust God, but their preparation says otherwise. They pray for change, but plan for stagnation. They confess faith, but organize their lives around fear. God is looking for people whose actions agree with their prayers. There is a sound in the Spirit when God speaks a word like this. It is the sound of transition. Transition is uncomfortable because it is the space between what was and what will be. It requires patience, courage, and absolute dependence on God. In transition, nothing feels stable except God. That is intentional. God strips away false securities so that you learn to lean fully on Him. If everything else could support you, you would not need faith. God does not rush, but He is never late. And He says it is time, it means every delay has already served its purpose. The waiting built your character. The struggle strengthened your endurance. The resistance sharpened your discernment. You are not behind, you are prepared. The enemy wants you to believe you missed your moment, but God is saying your moment is now. Pack your bags, it's time. Do not wait for applause. Do not wait for permission. Obedience does not require consensus. Some people will not understand your move because they were never meant to go with you. When God calls you forward, He often allows misunderstanding to test your conviction. If you need everyone to agree, you are not ready to lead. God often separates before He elevates. Loneliness in transition is not rejection, it is refinement. There is a courage that comes when you finally decide to obey God fully. It is the courage that says, even if I don't see how, I trust who. God does not fail. He does not miscalculate. He does not abandon what He initiates. When He tells you to move, He commits His power to your obedience. The ground may look unfamiliar, but it will recognize your feet because God has already claimed it. Some of you have been circling the same mountain, fighting the same battles, praying the same prayers, because you refuse to move when God first spoke. Delay does not cancel God's plan, but it does prolong unnecessary struggle. Obedience shortens the distance between promise and fulfillment. God is merciful, but He is also purposeful. He will keep calling until you answer. Pack your bags. It's time also means let go of who you thought you were. Identity must evolve with assignment. You cannot step into a greater responsibility with a smaller self-image. God sees more in you than you see in yourself. He calls you forward not because you are perfect, but because you are willing. Willingness attracts grace. Humility invites empowerment. The next season will require new thinking, deeper faith, stronger discipline. God is not just changing your location, He is changing your level. New levels demand new devotion. You cannot carry casual faith into a demanding assignment. God is calling you to rise internally before you rise externally. The journey begins inside before it manifests outside. There will be moments when you want to turn back. Familiar pain can feel safer than unfamiliar promise, but remember this, what God has ahead of you will require the courage you are developing now. Do not interpret difficulty as a sign you are wrong. Resistance often confirms you are moving in the right direction. Growth always confronts what is comfortable. God said, pack your bags. It's time because delay has expired. Fear has lost authority, and complacency can no longer coexist with calling. Heaven is in motion, and you are being summoned to align. This is not about escape, it is about assignment. God is repositioning you so that what He placed inside you can finally be released. Listen carefully. This is not a message for everyone. It is for those who feel the weight of purpose pressing against their spirit. Those who know they were made for more, not in pride, but in responsibility. those who are tired of surviving and ready to serve at a higher capacity. God is calling you out because others are waiting on what you carry. When you move, change you didn't even know were there will fall off. When you obey, clarity will follow. God reveals the next step only after the first step is taken. Faith is progressive. Light comes as you walk, not before. Stop demanding certainty before obedience. God is not asking you to understand everything. He is asking you to trust Him completely. Pack your bags. It's time. Time to leave the place of limitation. Time to exit cycles that no longer produce life. Time to step into alignment with God's voice. Time to stop negotiating with fear and start agreeing with faith. Time to move from preparation to manifestation. God is speaking and His voice carries power to transform those who respond. Do not underestimate what happens when one person obeys God fully. One act of obedience can shift generations. One decision can unlock doors that have been closed for years. God does not need numbers, He needs surrender. When you say yes, heaven responds. The weight you feel is not pressure, it is glory preparing to rest on a willing vessel. God is entrusting you with more, and increase always begins with instruction. Pack your bags. It's time means God believes you are ready, even if you are still trembling. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is movement despite it. As you prepare to move, guard your heart. Doubt will speak louder in transition. Voices from the past will try to pull you back. Remind yourself of who called you. God does not change His mind because circumstances shift. His word stands. What He promised, He will perform. You are not walking into emptiness. You are walking into fulfillment. The path may be narrow, but it is purposeful. The process may be intense, but it is intentional. God is with you, before you, and within the obedience He is calling for. Pack your bags, it's time. Time to become who God has been forming you to be. Time to trust beyond logic. Time to move beyond memory. Time to step into the unknown, knowing God is already there, waiting for your yes, waiting for your movement, waiting for your faith to take form in action, waiting for you to rise and walk forward into the space He prepared long before you have. Ear knew you would need it. There is a holy urgency in the voice of God when He speaks like this, because moments like these do not come often and they do not wait forever. God is not emotional, but He is intentional. When He says it is time, it means alignment has converged. Purpose, preparation, and opportunity have met at the same point. Heaven is not confused. Heaven is precise. The only variable left is human response. History changes when one person decides to obey God without delay. Some people are waiting for a sign, but the instruction is already the sign. God does not always thunder from the heavens. Often He speaks with a quiet authority that demands attentiveness. The problem is not that God is silent. The problem is that distraction has made people deaf. When God says, pack your bags, He is calling you out of spiritual noise into focused obedience. This is not a season for casual faith. This is not a season for divided loyalty. God is calling for clarity, and clarity always demands decision. God never moves people randomly. He moves them strategically. Every relocation in your life, internal or external, is connected to assignment. You are not leaving because something failed. You are leaving because something must begin. The end of one chapter is not a punishment, it is a transition. God writes in seasons, not sentences. When one season closes, it is because its purpose has been fulfilled. Refusing to move forward is like rereading a page God has already turned. There are people who are clinging to what was because they are afraid of who they must become. Change exposes responsibility. New territory requires new discipline. God is not just expanding your borders, He is expanding your capacity to steward what He gives. Increase is not a reward for faith, it is a test of maturity. God will not entrust greater influence to someone unwilling to grow internally. That is why He says, pack your bags, it's time, because movement is the catalyst for transformation. God is not calling you to run away from difficulty. He is calling you to run toward purpose. Sometimes the greatest act of faith is leaving what you mastered to enter what you must learn. Pride prefers familiarity. Humility embraces growth. God resists stagnation because stagnation contradicts His nature. Everything He created was designed to grow, to multiply, to advance. When you stop moving, you stop reflecting His image. Listen carefully. The discomfort you feel is not a sign of failure. It is a signal of readiness. God disturbs what is comfortable when it no longer challenges you. Comfort can become a cage if you stay too long. God did not place greatness inside you so you could protect it from risk. He placed it there so it could be poured out. What you refuse to release will eventually suffocate you. Some of you are afraid because you think moving means losing control, but you were never meant to be in control. God was. Faith begins where control ends. When God calls you to move, He is inviting you to trust His sovereignty over your security. Security built on obedience is stronger than security built on certainty. Certainty fades, God remains. God said, pack your bags. It's time because the environment you are in cannot sustain the vision He has given you. Vision always demands expansion. If your surroundings do not stretch you, they will shrink you. God is relocating you so that your faith can breathe again. He is moving you away from voices that limit you and closer to assignments that refine you. Do not underestimate the power of separation. God often separates before He elevates. Separation is not rejection, it is protection. Not everyone who walked with you can walk where you are going. Some people were assigned to your preparation, not your promise. Ying them forward would slow you down. God is merciful, but He is also wise. He knows what weight you can carry and what must be released. There will be moments in this journey when you feel exposed. Familiar cover will be gone. Old labels will no longer fit. But exposure is not vulnerability when God is your covering. God allows exposure so that dependence shifts fully onto Him. When all you have left is God, you discover that God has always been enough. Pack your bags. It's time also means stop rehearsing old battles. You cannot fight tomorrow's assignment with yesterday's mindset. God is calling you to renew your thinking. Faith that does not evolve becomes fragile. God is not impressed by how long you have believed. He is moved by how deeply you trust Him now. Fresh obedience releases fresh anointing. Some of you are hesitant because you think obedience will cost you too much. But what has disobedience already cost you? Delayed joy, stalled growth, repeated frustration. God's instructions are never meant to drain you. They are meant to direct you. Obedience may require sacrifice, but disobedience guarantees stagnation. God does not bargain with destiny. God is not asking you to understand the full picture, because understanding is not the foundation. Trust is. Faith is not blind. It is anchored. Anchored in the character of God, anchored in His faithfulness, anchored in the truth that He never calls without committing His presence to the call. When you step forward, you do not go alone. God goes with you, and that changes everything. There is a generation waiting for your obedience. There are doors locked because you have not arrived yet. God's plans are interconnected. Your movement unlocks movement in others. When you delay, it affects more than you know. This is not just about you. God is positioning you as an answer to prayers you did not pray. Pack your bag. GS, it's time means God is trusting you with responsibility. Responsibility is the highest form of honor. God does not reveal His plans to spectators. He reveals them to participants. Participation requires action. Action requires courage. Courage grows when you decide that God's voice matters more than your comfort. As you move, you will encounter resistance, not because you are wrong, but because opposition always recognizes destiny before people do. Do not personalize resistance. Do not internalize criticism. Stay focused on instruction. God never promised ease, but He promised presence. Presence outweighs convenience. You may not feel strong, but obedience does not require strength. it releases it. Strength comes after movement. Peace comes after surrender. Clarity comes after decision. Stop waiting to feel ready. Readiness is revealed in obedience, not emotion. God equips those who move, not those who hesitate. Pack your bags. It's time, because the old identity can no longer contain the new calling. God is redefining you. Labels given by people will fall away. Titles you clung to will lose meaning. Only what God calls you will remain. Let Him name you. Let Him lead you. Let Him stretch you beyond what you thought possible. The fear of the unknown is powerful, but it is powerless compared to the faithfulness of God. The unknown is only unknown to you. It is fully known to God. He has already prepared what you are walking into. He has already accounted for your weakness. He has already planned for your growth. This is not the time to look back. Looking back slows momentum and distorts perspective. God is always ahead. Forward is where provision waits. Forward is where revelation unfolds. Forward is where purpose breeds. When God says it's time, forward is the only faithful direction. Some of you will move quietly, others will move boldly. The method is not the focus. Obedience is. God honors movement in all forms when it is rooted in trust. Do not compare your journey to others. God customizes instruction. What matters is that you respond. Pack your bags. It's time. Time to believe God beyond what you can see. Time to trust Him beyond what you can measure. Time to walk into the tension of faith, knowing that tension is where growth happens. God is not abandoning you. He is advancing you. He is calling you higher, deeper, further. Not to exhaust you, but to fulfill what He placed inside you before fear ever had a voice. When God speaks movement into your life, He is not reacting to circumstances. He is revealing intention. Circumstances change, economies rise and fall, opinions shift, but God's purpose stands unmoved. That is why His instruction often contradicts logic. Logic measures risk. God measures destiny. Logic asks what you will lose. God sees what you will become. When God says pack your bags, He is not consulting your fears. He is activating your future. There is a difference between waiting on God and hiding from obedience. Waiting refines patience. Hiding feeds fear. Many people call delay wisdom when it is actually avoidance. God does not honor hesitation dressed as spirituality. When He speaks clearly, clarity becomes responsibility. Silence after instruction is not neutrality, it is resistance. God is patient, but He is also persistent, and He will continue to stir your spirit until you either move or grow weary of resisting. God's voice carries weight because it carries authority. When He tells you to move, He is shifting authority over your life from what has been shaping you to what He has designed for you. Old environments shape old outcomes. New assignments require new atmospheres. God is relocating you not only geographically or professionally, but spiritually, into a posture where faith leads and fear follows. Some of you have been faithful in obscurity, consistent without recognition, obedient without applause. God has seen every unseen act. He has counted every quiet sacrifice. Now He is saying it is time, because faithfulness in hidden places always precedes visibility in appointed places. God does not expose you prematurely, but neither does He hide you indefinitely. When the season of preparation is complete, concealment becomes limitation. Pack your bags. It's time also means stop negotiating with God. Partial obedience delays full release. God does not need half of your trust. He requires all of it. Divided hearts create stalled destinies. When you finally surrender completely, you will be surprised by how much resistance falls away. The struggle was never the assignment. The struggle was the negotiation. God is not intimidated by your questions, but He will not let questions replace obedience. Answers often come after movement, not before. Faith is not a contract, it is a covenant of trust. God asks you to walk because walking develops reliance. If He carried you everywhere, you would never learn to follow His lead. As you move, God will refine your discernment. Not every opportunity is alignment. Not every open door is assigned. But when God says it is time, He also sharpens your hearing. The more you obey, the clearer His voice becomes. Obedience tunes the spirit. Resistance dulls it. Choose clarity by choosing compliance. Some of you are stepping into unfamiliar territory, and that unfamiliarity is intentional. God does not reveal everything at once because revelation requires readiness. Too much knowledge too soon would overwhelm you. God feeds revelation in portions so that faith can digest it. Trust the process. God knows how to introduce you to your future without crushing you under its weight. Pack your bags. It's time means God is expanding your influence. Influence is not about position. It is about impact. God increases influence by increasing responsibility. Responsibility demands courage, humility, and dependence. The higher you go, the deeper your reliance on God must become. Pride collapses under pressure. Humility is sustained by grace. There will be moments when you feel alone, but solitude is not abandonment when God is present. God often isolates to insulate. He removes distractions so He can speak clearly. He pulls you aside so He can prepare you without interruption. Isolation with God produces clarity. Isolation without God produces fear. Stay connected. Stay listening. Do not romanticize the struggle you are leaving. God delivered you from it for a reason. Looking back with longing distorts memory. God wants you grateful, not nostalgic. Gratitude honors the past. Nostalgia traps you in it. Honor what was, but do not live there. God is calling you forward because forward is where purpose unfolds. Pack your bags. It's time because God is accelerating certain things that were delayed by hesitation. When obedience finally aligns, momentum follows. What seemed slow will begin to move quickly. What seemed closed will open suddenly. Acceleration is not chaos. It is alignment catching up. God redeems time when hearts align with His will. You are not too late. God exists outside of time. What feels delayed to you is still on schedule with Him. When you step into obedience, you step into His timing. Stop measuring your life by comparison. God's calendar for you is precise. Trust His timing more than your perception. Some of you fear that if you move, you might fail. But failure is not final when God is involved. God does not define you by mistakes. He refines you through them. Staying still out of fear of failure guarantees stagnation. Moving with God guarantees growth. Growth is always worth the risk. Pack your bags. It's time to redefine success. Success is not comfort, it is completion. It is not ease, it is alignment. It is not applause, it is obedience. God measures success by faithfulness to instruction. When you align with His will, even difficulty becomes meaningful. As you step forward, guard your spirit against cynicism. Cynicism is what fear becomes when it grows tired of hoping. Hope anchored in God never disappoints. God has not brought you this far to abandon you. He has not spoken to mislead you. His word carries power to sustain you through what He calls you into. There is a strength being formed in you that cannot be developed in stillness. Movement reveals weakness so that God can supply strength. Do not despise the moments when you feel stretched. Stretching prepares you to hold more. God is enlarging your capacity so that you can carry what He intends to place in your hands. Pack your bags. It's time because the future requires you. God's plans are not abstract, they're personal. He chooses people, not just ideas. He chooses hearts willing to trust Him beyond what they can control. You are being chosen again, not because you are flawless, but because you are willing. Let faith rise above memory. Let trust silence fear. Let obedience outpace hesitation. God is calling, and His call is not vague. It is clear, it is purposeful, and it is urgent. Pack your bags. It's time. And the moment you move, you will discover that God was already there, waiting, ready to meet you in the next place of becoming. Now listen with your spirit, because this moment is not about inspiration. It is about decision. God has spoken. And His voice is not meant to echo in your emotions and fade. It is meant to take root in your will. This is the hour to examine your life honestly, not with condemnation, but with courage. Ask yourself where you have settled instead of obeyed, where you have delayed instead of trusted, where you have grown comfortable instead of faithful. God is not exposing these things to shame you. He is revealing them to free you. This is the moment to stand before God without excuses, without rehearsed explanations, without pretending you did not hear Him. You heard Him. You felt the stirring. You recognized the weight of His call. God is inviting you into alignment, not perfection. He is calling you closer, not because you drifted too far, but because He is drawing you deeper. Nearness to God is not measured by words, but by surrender. Let this be the day you stop negotiating with fear and start agreeing with faith. Let this be the moment you decide that God's voice will be the loudest influence in your life. Lay down every identity that God did not give you. Release every attachment that competes with obedience. Let go of every version of yourself that was shaped by survival instead of purpose. God is not asking you to become someone else. He is calling you to become who He always intended. Choose to walk closer to God, not out of obligation, but out of trust. Trust that He knows what you need before you ask. Trust that His direction is kinder than your comfort. Trust that obedience will take you farther than safety ever could. The path ahead may not be familiar, but it is faithful. God does not call you into uncertainty. He calls you into dependence. And dependence is where His power is revealed most clearly. Let your response to God be more than emotion. Let it be movement. Let it be preparation. Let it be a quiet but unshakable resolve that says, I will go where God sends me. I will release what God asks me to release. And I will trust Him even when the road feels narrow. Heaven responds to that kind of faith. God honors hearts that choose Him above all else. Remember this, you are not behind, you are not forgotten, and you are not disqualified. God's call does not expire because of delay, but fulfillment waits for obedience. This is your moment to rise, not in your own strength, but in reliance on God. Let faith guide your steps. Let obedience steady your heart. Let purpose silence your fear. God has spoken. The invitation is clear. The time is now. Pack your bags, not just physically, but spiritually. Pack your faith, your trust, your willingness, your obedience. Step forward with courage, because the one who called you is faithful, and walking with God will always lead you exactly where you were meant to be.